Hello, everyone, and welcome to my HR in Action Vodcast. I'm thrilled to be interviewing a truly unique HR professional who's shaking up the way we think about human resources, especially for this younger generation and social media users. Meet Aunt Bree. A popular TikTok creator with over 119,000 followers and counting, who brings a real world HR insights to life through her hilarious skits, reenactments, and her follower stories. She combines her professional HR experience with creativity, humor, and she makes HR approachable, relatable, and even entertaining. So, in today's interview, we're going to take a deep dive into her journey in HR and how she uses social media to educate and engage um, the workplace, and go through the workplace challenges and see if she has any advice for us entering the HR field. So thank you so much for joining us, Bree. So let's get started.
Absolutely.
Um, can you tell us about your background in HR and how it led to you creating TikToks and getting on that platform?
Sure. So I have been in payroll for 20 years and HR for about 15. So it was an unintentional evolution of my career. Really, payroll was always my goal. I was always really good at numbers. They made sense. It was an easy job for me. It got me through college. So when I started getting more invested was after college. My first child was born, and I really started to notice that payroll was kind of the end game. It wasn't where, all of the data filtered in through payroll. And when issues would come up, it didn't originate with payroll, it originated somewhere else. So I really wanted to understand. And that's really what got me interested in the HR side. I started with the data and then realizing that, people data it can't be reliable all the time because of the people element in it. And so that kind of opened the door to, okay, why? Like, what is it about, people and they all have to work, they want to get paid, they want these things to be right. What exactly is happening here? So I really got invested in that side and compliance and recruiting and that really human element of all of it. Um, I I recognized that my personality was always black and white. It was numbers. But HR was a challenge for me because I'm naturally not a people person. I'm very much an introvert, but I started to recognize myself in the employees. And if I was dealing with HR, how would I want to be, received? How would I want somebody to help me? And so being able to connect in that way, I really found my passion for it. I really did.
Kind of-
Um, for social media, it just became a natural evolution, right? We've gotten to 2025 and, you know, the strategy and business and all of that. It's great, but social media is the future of what we're doing. This is how we can educate. This is how we can engage. This is how we can find that human level that employers are constantly looking for. And I ultimately started making videos because my daughter asked me to. She was like, Mom, let's do a funny video. I'd never even heard of TikTok. Um, and how me making HR videos started was something funny happened at work, and I couldn't stop thinking about how funny it was. And I thought, I'm going to make a video about this because I bet somebody else has experienced this. And boy, oh boy, it was that PTO video, paid time off, the woman who was arguing over paid time off.
Yes.
And it just took off. Yeah, it definitely took off from there.
That is so cool. And I love that video where she thinks that because she asked for her paid time off, she's going to get her 40 hours plus
For
her
80.
extra time. And it's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like, how? How do you put those two together and think that you're going to get extra money on top?
And she was a manager, and I will say she actually did run across that video and contacted me, which is a story I haven't told yet, but she knew who she was when she saw the video and she recognized that it was her, and we've laughed about it since then. So thank
That
goodness.
is so funny.
Yeah.
Um, so I know your videos often highlight real world challenges in the workplace. What reoccurring issues do you see that most affect employee relations? Like, what is that one thing that is a constant everyday hit?
I think, the ever changing landscape of policy and politics and compliance, it really has an impact on employees that I think they don't really realize. And so it's really important as HR professionals that we advocate for employees even when they don't know we're advocating for them. I think political landscape really drives a lot of the laws that we deal with as employers, as companies.
Hmm.
Employees don't really have visibility to that. They don't understand that their votes impact their job. They don't understand that, somebody signing a bill somewhere will negatively affect them. And I think there's definitely a need for more education around those situations. From an employee relations standpoint, I think people get locked into their position of distrust and feeling slighted, not by the company, but by HR. They feel like they're being victimized by us, and we're literally there to advocate for them. And I think that's something that employers have done for a really long time is they've kind of made HR villains. Because they have to point that attention somewhere, and they don't want to point it at the employer. They don't want to point it at the CEO. They don't want to point it there. So I think HR is a scapegoat. And I think most of what I see on a regular basis is people who do not trust me,
Hmm.
who don't want to talk to me. One of the biggest challenges that I deal with on a day-to-day basis is trying to earn that trust, is trying to prove them wrong, is trying to show, even if they don't trust me, that I am here for you. And you may not see it, but hopefully you'll benefit from it.
Yes, I totally agree. In my current line of profession in radiology and CT, it's earning that patient's trust to
Yeah,
let them know that you're there to help them, and you have to work hard to get that and get them to calm down and just be like, okay, let's work this out. Let's get this done so we can move on.
exactly.
I
Exactly.
I I can totally see how in different lines of work that totally just goes through on an everyday basis for everyone in every
Yeah.
job.
Yeah, they don't want to bring, their family situation to you. They don't want to tell you the answers to the questions that you're asking. They want to go on leave, but they don't want to explain themselves because they feel like you are going to cause a problem for them. They feel like
Right.
you are the one who is going to stop them from doing something they want to do. And the reality of it is, if you're a good HR person, especially, you're there to protect the company. And how you do that is by protecting the employees. They're the asset, right? Yeah.
Yes, totally. So how do you balance being a professional with being relatable and entertaining online? Like, how do you do that balance?
It's hard. And like I mentioned, that is a challenge for me because I am such an
Mhm.
introvert. I think I really rely on humor to get me through difficult conversations, difficult. If you can't see the humor in it, then
Yeah.
it'll break you mentally. I've dealt with everything from, you know, pandemics and cancer scares and hurricanes and flooding and all that, like from an emergency preparedness situation, all the way down to an employee's boyfriend came and beat her, at on site. And if you can't like compartmentalize and find the humor in different situations, then the bad situations will weigh you down. That's all there will ever be. That's the only thing that you'll remember. So it's really important for my mental health that when things come up, that I identify the humor, and I try very hard to show that on my videos. I think people relate to my content, not because they're in HR payroll, but because they too have had an experience in the corporate world, that's made them feel the way the video makes them feel. If that's
Right.
frustrating, or is a manager taking advantage, or an employee who doesn't understand something. And I think that's the reason why it I'm doing as well as I am on TikTok. There is no debate about employment issues. Like if I was doing political videos, yeah, there'd be a debate. There'd be some back and forth. If I was doing mothering videos, yeah, people have different opinions. But everybody seems to have the same feelings about their workplace and bad
Yeah.
man. Everyone's had a bad manager. Everyone's had a difficult coworker. Everyone. So I think connecting those dots and using humor to kind of bridge those experiences, I think that's what really stands out to the viewers. Yeah.
Completely agree. So in noticing all the trends that you're seeing, um, social media has really changed the way people are viewing HR. And what do you think it's helped make? Do you think that it's helping make HR a more human and approachable um, industry within like companies? Do you think like that whole scapegoat thing is kind of
Yeah,
going
kind of taking
away a
the
little
dog
bit?
down.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think social media it can be negative for a lot of reasons, but I think it's one of the biggest positives when it comes to building that trust and
Right.
creating transparency. Our world is not one that you really see unless you live it. Like people who
Hmm.
are not in HR or have never worked in it, they don't understand what goes on. And I think people are surprised by the videos. They're surprised by the feelings that they invoke.
Hmm.
They're also surprised that not all HR people are out to get them. I think that is such a huge misconception. And because they color everything that they see with me is colored by their own experience. My hope and prayer with social media is that we continue to open that door and show people that we're just people too. We're here to do a job, yes, but we have rules and guidelines and we treat everyone the same. It is not personal. This is
Right.
business. And showing them that human side of it, I think will help them professionally. I think it will
Mhm.
help them grow and develop. And I think companies are starting to pinpoint that too. They're starting to realize that they can create a connection with a product, with an employee, with an emotion. They can use social media to promote things, yes, but they can also use social media to give insight to different industries. It the the opportunities are endless when it comes to this. Recruiting, sales, yes, marketing, yes, education, yes. I think social media is a key tool, and we're going to see a lot more companies utilizing it in the next 20 years. Like it's the next big thing for sure.
That's so interesting. Um, so has you being on TikTok opened up new opportunities for you in different ways?
Um, well, yeah, it has. I've definitely gotten some more calls to
Mhm.
contract. I've gotten a few companies have reached out to me and just asked if I'm available, things like that. And I try very hard not to take more contracts than I can handle. But also there's this new revenue source that I had never anticipated.
Mhm.
And, I'm still in the early phases, I'm still in the early phases of kind of figuring out my platform.
Right.
This month will be the first time I've ever made any money on TikTok. And what am I going to do with that? And I'm really thinking about kind of giving back to charities. I'm thinking about, maybe developing training courses, education. I'm thinking about what comes next for me in a way that
Mhm.
I've never really thought about it before. It's definitely opened some doors. I will say not every client I've ever dealt with has been thrilled about the videos. Uh, and that being said, the reason I call them skits, the reason I call them reenactments, and I'm not on the phone for any of them. They're all,
Mhm.
I would never do that as an HR professional. I would never, ever, ever, breach someone's
Right.
confidentiality like that. Um, but it's funny the people who get offended, and it's like, you're offended because you recognize that your behavior isn't obscene and that
Right.
you feel called out. Like that kind of says more about you than it does me. And I don't really want to work with that. So
Right.
I think it's been helpful to weed out certain clients. Yeah, very helpful.
That I just find it so interesting. Um, so you're finding that it's kind of bridging both worlds from your professional and then this outside money. Like I've been watching you for a while, I feel like, but I know it's probably been like 2 or 3 months that you've been
It's only been a
doing
month.
this.
It's
It's
only
only
been a
been a
month.
month.
This is my first month.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
so crazy. Because I
it's
feel like I've
crazy.
been watching your skits, um, and they make me laugh. Because I see a lot of what you're doing in my own personal job. Like you said, like people get that feeling of how, oh, I've dealt with a coworker like that.
Yeah.
um, Especially the most recent ones that you've put out with the lead that is trying to write somebody up. I'm just like,
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
seen that. And
Coworker pips. Yeah, you'd be shocked.
yes,
That's barely the tip of the iceberg with coworkers. I've had so many peer reports and so many people reach out and completely like inappropriate like comments and reporting and all of that. I haven't really touched on it yet, but very soon I'm going to start talking about the flip side of like when I've made a mistake
mhm,
and start making videos about that. I'm going to start making videos about when somebody is, falsely reports to HR and
right.
how that can, cause other side, other issues and a lack of trust and, things like that. So I want to kind of share that side of it as well. Right now, I'm not there yet. I still have a lot more stories to tell. But I definitely want it to be, I want to be as transparent as I possibly can be and show
Mhm,
them, yes, this is funny. Yes, I can give coaching and all that, and I'm good at it. But also, here's where I've been really bad at it. And because I think I hope will help people kind of tie those things in with their own experience too and say, okay, it is okay that I've made a mistake. And I've made a mistake like that too, or I've believed
right.
something shouldn't at work too. And I hope to keep it as relatable and as humble as I possibly can so that I can kind of keep that connection with
Mhm,
the audience. The humor, sometimes it's not even intentional. It's just funny that sometimes it's just so unreal that it
right.
becomes humorous. And it's hard not to laugh on those calls, but I figure I could fake it and be like, oh, scream at them, or I could fake it and laugh on the calls and pretend like that was my reaction. But I want to have as clear and concise reenactment of exactly what happened and how if I burst out laughing on these calls, nobody's going to trust that. Nobody's going to want to call an HR person
Right.
who loses it. No one's going to want to deal with me if I'm screaming at employees. Um, so I forget your original question. I'm sorry. I've gone on a complete tangent here.
You're fine. You're so fine. I'm finding it so interesting, um, how like you've evolved from, and it's only been a month, and I feel like I've watched you for months and months. But a lot of the things, like I'm like, oh my God, I've had a coworker that's done that, or um, the one that really resonated with me was where the female had called in and she's like, they're making me clean up
Oh,
the lounge, and
kitchen.
they
Yeah.
want me to cook a cake, or they want me to make food. And
Yeah.
it's 2025, like, yeah, like you can do it yourself. You all can
You know
order a
what?
cake.
I have those conversations a lot more than I want to admit. Probably 2 or 3 times a year, I get those kinds of calls, and it's really sad. But this younger generation that's coming into the workforce now, that's really kind of getting their bearings and moving themselves up the corporate ladder, they're
Mhm.
not taking that. Like they are absolutely not going to stand for blatant sexism. They're not going to stand for being
Right.
compartmentalized like that in the professional workforce. And I'm kind of here for it. Like I think it's amazing. But 5 years ago, not even that long, people would not have made report. Like no woman would have made a report like that to HR.
Right.
It is a very different generation now. And I think that transparency reinforces this with that generation. They want to feel seen, they want to feel heard, their feelings are valid, they can process better than previous generations.
Mhm.
They're not going to let those things stand in their way in a corporate environment anymore. And I think that's something that employers really need to be aware of. You're
Mhm.
not dealing with millennials and Gen X anymore. You're not. This is
Mhm.
a very different breed of employee that they're about to deal with. So
Yeah, I see that a lot. I'm a clinical instructor for a radiology program currently, and I'm trying
Mhm.
to move into a professor. So I have these younger students, they're in their early 20s, like they're 20, 21, 22, and I see how they're just like, no, I'm not gonna put up with that, especially when they actually get out into the workforce. My students, I found that they're not taking anything from the doctors like we used to back in my day. Like, oh, if they would yell at us, it'd be like, oh, okay, and then we'd move on. No, they're standing up for themselves and talking back. And I'm just like,
We are.
but
And
but
it's
then I'm
scary,
just like,
right? Because you're like, and of course, the first reaction that the managers have is, that's a, insubordinates. That's ridiculous. What are you going to do about it, HR? I'm like, nothing. I'm not going to do anything. And like retraining the employers and these people who are not used to it, retrain them to
right.
say she's allowed to have feelings about this.
Mhm.
That's not a fireable offense. Um, the hard part is that you can't help when women get branded as troublemakers
Right.
or complainers or whatever. And so really that's a big challenge, especially in the HR industry right now, is I want them to feel comfortable reporting and all that, but I don't want to happen to them, what happened to us to happen to them, which
Right.
is they don't want to make waves. They don't want to, we got put into a box. And I do
Yeah.
see, some companies are going to try to do that again. They're going to try to, cut women off when they make reports like that. They're going to try to silence them. They're going to try to, completely disregard what they're saying. I'm interested to see what happens. I don't think this new generation is going to take that. I don't think so. But I wonder how it's all going to play out. Are they going to be the bitchy women? Or sorry, are
Right.
they,
No, I
you
I completely agree because I know, like, I give off rusty bitch face. And I at work I deal with doctors all day, and I have been in that industry for 15 years, and I have found that when I get my little baby doctors that just graduated, and I'm trying to tell them this isn't the exam you need for this patient because I'm playing with radiation. So I know what you need, and I know, so I'm having to tell these men usually that are trying to put their stake in the ground and say, I'm a doctor, and then be like, okay, well, I've been doing this for longer than you even thought to be a doctor, so this is
yeah,
what you need. And like, it's not going over their head, but I'm like, don't make me call your attending.
yeah, exactly.
And but
That
but then
generation will
they
figure it out.
Yeah, and then I find that they're just like, okay, well, I'm not going to go to her because she's going to tell me what to do. And it's like, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm telling you what is best for the patient because that
Yeah,
is why we're here.
yeah,
And we need to take care of them so that we keep them around. Because it's
exactly,
like, and I
exactly.
mean, we at work too, I find that we use a lot of humor, especially in the medical field. I feel that we use humor a lot. Um, and I can see a correlation between like medicine and HR, where we use that humor to say, okay, because like I find myself, getting patients down, and I'm just like, oh, get them off my table. Not today, Satan. Not today.
Yes. Well,
We're
it's the next few
moving
years,
on.
especially, as this older generation starts to get phased
Mhm.
out, and they're going to have to eventually. They can't live forever, right? They can't do
Right.
this forever. And the Gen X and millennials especially, like I can say without a shadow of a doubt, the millennial generation is the best period, like ever. This generation is so incredible at leading. They're so incredible at, engaging employees in a real way, at understanding their own feelings, at understanding, having empathy,
Mhm.
having respect. And I think a big chunk of Gen X too, but it's really the millennial generation that we're seeing kind of coming into their own in the professional world. Um, I think things are going to change a lot when they start getting into positions where they're in charge. And I can't, I hope I get to see it. Like I hope I'm part of the millennial generation, but I don't really
Yes.
include myself in that. But we are being strategic and we are paving the way for what comes next. We know, what to expect. We treat people like humans. We have empathy. We're good leaders. Most of us are very educated. I'm interested to see what happens, and especially with social media and all of that, when the HR industry, I think things are going to change drastically under millennials. I really do.
I completely agree with that. I feel like our generation has moved mountains from in within like 5, 10 years.
Yeah.
There's been such drastic changes within management and in HR to see where people are getting labeled to now it's like, okay, they're respected.
Yeah.
And especially females in any
Yeah.
industry. So
Exactly.
I completely agree. I have one last question for you.
Okay.
What is the wildest or funniest HR scenario that you have reenacted that you feel like currently up to date within this last month?
Hmm. Yeah, there's one that's coming that I think is
Yeah.
the wildest. I've kind of been holding off. There is an NDA, but I'm not really in breach of it, so I've kind of been holding off on it though, a little uneasy. I will say the parking lot Karen was one of the most blatant, disrespectful employees I've ever dealt with. She had never reported before. I had never spoken to her before, and she was vicious. Like half the stuff that she said didn't even make it into the video. She called me a liberal. She called me at one point, she called me ageist. She screamed. I mean, this was over a parking spot. And there was no really communicating with her. Now the lawnmower and all that at the time, it wasn't a lawnmower that was on the phone. She heard somebody else having a meeting in the background. That was what actually happened. Was I had to use something because that was how I remembered it, but I used a lawnmower instead. Somebody else was having a conversation in an office space that I was in, and she was very upset that she could hear somebody laughing in a conversation. And she was screaming curse words at me, bombs at me, and all this. In a professional world, why she felt comfortable to call an HR person and scream at them like that, I will never understand. After everything was said and done, she's still working there because
Wow.
the manager did nothing, the CEO did nothing. They were all just, oh, that's just her. Like they were not even a little bit concerned about her behavior. And it was traumatic for me.
Mhm.
Not because she was personally attacking me or whatever. I'm really good at kind of compartmentalizing. You have to be in HR.
Right.
You have got to be able to compartmentalize your personal feelings and know it's not personal. And you have to be able to cut it off and go home and be with your family, and you
Mhm.
can't take it with you because if you do, it'll break you mentally.
Yes.
Um, but there was no regard for her role, for anything. She had been getting away with it for so long that she knew there wasn't going to be punishment. She
Mhm.
knew that it was okay to talk to me this way. And it was actually the reason they had hired me, because they couldn't keep an HR person on staff. And I'm like, that's why. She still works there to this day. And it was one of the worst experiences I've ever dealt with. Most people have a certain regard for their employer. Even
Right.
when they're being fired, or even when they have a certain level of respect and
Mhm.
decency. And I honestly thought at first she had like a mental illness. Like that's what I thought was happening. It was one of the worst experiences as an HR professional. It was awful. And I could do nothing. They tied my hands.
Right.
I literally couldn't even address the situation. And there wasn't assigned parking spots.
Yeah, all that for a self-appointed assigned parking spot. That
Yeah.
is that is crazy. But I
Yeah.
want to thank you so much, Bree, for taking time to share your experiences, your insights with us today. It's been awesome learning how you're making HR engaging and accessible through this creative content, and hearing your real world perspective and challenges within this field. And I want to thank everyone for watching. And if you need to, I will link your TikTok down in the link so others can get on and get you more followers. And I really do appreciate your fresh and fun take on HR that's both educational and entertaining. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you
I
so much.
appreciate it. You have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you.